I'm going through a huge life transition right now, and there's a reason why maybe you should care. And if you stick around, you'll understand why. I am essentially using my life as one big experiment. I want to come on as much as I can during the week to share with you everything that I'm learning. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm wrapping up a chapter of leaving corporate America after being in it for almost 2 decades. I still am in a very high pressure, big pressure cooker kind of job, working on Wall Street, working what I like to say is the belly of the beast. And for a long time, it really served me. I mean, obviously, the money's great. Obviously, there's safety and there's security, and that's what I've always had to prioritize in my life, but that was fear-based, right? And most of my life I lived from a fear-based lens of needing to have every step figured out, needing to have my whole life, like the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, needing my life to have order and certainty. But where I have changed is that I've really worked really hard. Like, I've gotten certifications in emotional release. I've gotten certifications in neurosomatic intelligence, which is brain-based wellness to reprogram the nervous system. But as I've done these certifications to help other people, I've worked on it within my own life. And I've gotten to the point where my body is so much less tense than it was before. I used to carry so much chronic tension because I held everything together in my body. I held all the stress inside my body. I didn't have a proper outlet to process it. And now that I am fully I fully have an understanding of how to process stress, how to process energy, I don't get as tense anymore. My body doesn't build all that back up because I know how to release it. And my body feels mostly free at this point. And what follows with that is that your mind gets more free, your energy gets more freed up, you crave different things than you used to. And for me, I don't crave anything from a fear-based lens anymore. I don't operate from scarcity anymore. I operate more from abundance and understanding that there's so many opportunities out there, like there's so much life out there, and I get to experience it. And before, I didn't feel that way. I was so afraid of life. I kept myself so small. I kept my ecosystem really small because it was all I could bear to manage. But now that I can hold more energy in my life, like in my body, I can physically hold more energy. I actually can hold a bigger ecosystem. And so I decided that it's actually time to leave my job after 2 decades of working in this industry, almost 2 decades. I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to leave. And so I was working remotely for about, oh, she's a sweet girl. I've been working remotely for about 6 years, ever since COVID. And my job is based in New York City, which I moved out of New York City as soon as I realized that I wanted a different way of Paloma. Okay, baby girl. Okay. I wanted a different way of life. I wanted a slower way of life. I wanted less pressure in my day to day. I didn't know that it was pressure at the time. I didn't have that language for it until honestly a couple months ago. But for me, I just knew that it was really dysregulating to be in that environment and that fast paced life. And so I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And then I realized after 4 years that that wasn't fully for me. I wanted somewhere that felt more open, that didn't feel like there were so many identities or so many, I would say, programming. Like, you have to pick a box and pick a lane and stay in it. You're either conservative or you're liberal. You're either religious or you're atheist. And I'm none of that. I don't identify with boxes. I don't put myself in a box. I just am me. And so I moved to Austin, Texas. So now my boss asked that I move back to New York City. And initially I was so scared because I knew I didn't want to move back. but I also knew like I didn't feel ready to leave my job. I felt so scared to do it because I was like, oh, I have to, like, there, I have no other choice because that's not the life I want for myself. So now what do I do? Do I find another job in corporate America, or do I figure something else out? And initially I was going to create a program to teach people how to become stewards of their own energy, and there is a time in the future that I probably will still do that, but to me, that's the time is not right now. The time is actually creating awareness over why we need to do this as humans, why we need to understand our energy, why we need to move towards more life instead of against life. So that is what I'm doing with this series, is teaching people what happens when you choose life every single time, instead of the things that are draining you and depleting you and making you feel like crap. What happens when we can observe where we have excitement, when we can observe where there's more life for us instead of moving towards what's contracting us, which I've always done in the past, because again, it's fear-based, it's scarcity-based. And so I knew that I was going to leave the job. I just did not know what I was moving towards. And then I started working so much on my energy, of clearing programs from my body. By programs, I mean tension and fear and a lot of emotions that have taken up space. I've gotten to the point where I now can actually build energy in my body because I've cleared out so much residual unprocessed muck. And now I love Kundalini. I use Kundalini a lot to build my energy back up and to clear things that are kind of unprocessed as well, because it's a journey. It's not like it's one and done. It's a process that we're always going to have to come back to again and again, but it gets more enjoyable every time because it's not going to be so painful when we're clearing out things that have been there for such a long time. But anyway, so I got to the point where my energy just feels so much lighter and so much more like I actually felt abundance in my body in real time. It, like, my energy was so full up that I decided that day, like, I did not need anything. Like, I didn't need to buy anything. I didn't need to go out and seek something outside of myself. I wanted to create from that energy. It was the first time I ever felt that in my life. And I realized, what if I made my energy my purpose? What would that look like if I prioritized my regulation, if I prioritized more life? What would that feel like? How would my life evolve if I kept saying yes to life and no to things that make me feel like crap? So that's what this is. This is an exploration of that. And the thing that I do have to share is that, yes, I am moving back to New York City. I have to move back for a month and a half, and then I'm going to give my notice. Not only am I navigating going back to a corporate environment after 6 years of being outside of one, I'm also navigating going back to New York City for a month and a half after being outside of it for that length of time as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how I can track my energy, how I can maintain my baseline, how I can regulate in real time in an environment that triggers me. It's definitely one big experiment that I'm definitely excited to see how I can stay with myself and not override myself and override what I'm able to do, especially in a Wall Street type environment, because that's going to be a great challenge, because there's a lot of urgency culture there. There's a lot of needing things done quick and fast and now. And there's a lot of intense personalities and a lot of stress and rage that gets taken out on everybody. So I'm definitely curious to see how I'm able to maintain my sense of self, maintain my boundaries, maintain my baseline energy, and maybe even improve it. And if I do scale back a little bit, so be it. But this is like I said, an experiment to see how my nervous system can adapt and stay in my own lane, how I can treat my energy like my job, and what happens on the other side of actually leaving my job and when I have nothing to move to, when I am focused solely on my energy and letting more life in, what comes of that. And there's other challenges that happen with that, right? Especially as somebody that's always needed to prioritize safety and certainty in their life, and having to step into a situation where I'm no longer doing that. I no longer have the next step figured out, no longer know where my money is going to be coming from. And I do recognize that there is privilege in being able to do this. I'm not negating that. Like, I know that I'm very lucky to be in a job and in a position where I can leave and have time off without moving towards the next thing to make money. I've saved my money. I have a safety net, all of that stuff. But I would say where my privilege ends in a way is like where I did grow up in a very dysregulating household, where I grew up in the biggest pressure cooker of a household that one could probably ever grow up in. And to me, I'm coming from that. Like my nervous system came up from something like that, where there was physical abuse and neglect in the house, and emotional and mental abuse. There was the whole gamut of all of it, right? And that, like, I'm coming from that lens, which creates so much scarcity and so much fear and so much needing certainty, that I had to get myself to a certain space in my life, mentally, emotionally, energetically, that I no longer can take on anyone's things. I no longer attach my nervous system to somebody else's, in the sense that I need to co-regulate using someone else. That's, when someone's dysregulated, I become dysregulated because my nervous system needs to feel safe. So I have to match their energy. I don't do that anymore. I don't operate from that lens. And so this is me coming back from those programs and actually fully allowing myself to be myself and understand what myself looks like. So this is what the exploration is, the experiment. I'm using myself as one big human guinea pig, an anthropologist of the nervous system, because that's all this really is. If you allow more life in, it's because you have a regulated nervous system. And having a regulated nervous system is a privilege. And I do know this because I've lived so long without it, and to not have the time, the energy, and the space to prioritize the nervous system is difficult. It's hard to make the time when you have a fully stacked life and others to care about, and maybe you're working multiple jobs. But I plan on giving you guys practical tools that worked for me. And usually these tools only take 1 minute, 2 minutes. Literally, you don't need any more time than that just to move energy through your body. So that, I'll probably come on doing little things like that. Maybe some like YouTube lives and things like that of quick practices we can all do together. But it's mostly going to be about exploration, discovery, and how to understand why you should prioritize your energy and let life in more. Because when we operate from dysregulation, we're operating from scarcity every single time. Because from my own experience, because I've lived like that for so long, the less energy that we have in our body, as in the less energy that we have, like the less space that we have in our body to let energy process through us, the more in scarcity we are, because we don't have the ability to take in more energy into our body to create more, because we can't process energy when we're full up. So that is the lens that I'm coming from. That is how I see the world, how I see life, how I see the ways that us as humans should probably operate. And I'm so sorry if you could hear the dogs playing in the background. But anyway, that is just the intro to what the series is. I moved to New York on Tuesday, July 14th, and I am just going to figure out how to navigate life from here on out. And knowing that there is a countdown, there's only 6 weeks in New York. I am counting down the weeks, and I'll post the hard stuff. I'll post the exciting stuff. I'll post everything because I'm leaving a whole life behind, leaving my 3 animals under the care of a friend of mine who's kind enough to help me out. And so there's going to be a lot of sadness that moves through me. There's going to be a lot of grief because I'm closing out old identities of old versions of myself, and maybe even grieving a life that I stayed in for far too long. I overstayed my welcome and I needed to leave ages ago. And there's going to be grief moving through that, and frustration and anger and stress. But there's also going to be so much excitement and so much beauty and so much anticipation for the next chapter. So you're going to come through the whole journey with me, and hopefully you get something out of this that can have a lasting impression on you and maybe how you move through the world, because that's what this is all about. Moving through the world to move towards life instead of deflecting and detracting more life, and inviting more of the sameness. Because when we don't invite more life in, when we don't say yes to life and we say yes to contraction and scarcity and things that make your world smaller, that's saying yes to a lot of the same cycles and patterns and ways of being and things in the world that are what your dysregulated self would say yes to. And regulation requires saying yes to more life. You know, when you're regulated, you can have more life because you can hold more. So that's what this is, and I'm excited to become the experiment for life. And if any of this intrigues you and it piques your interest, feel free to engage with me in the comments section if you have any kinds of questions that you have. Why I'm even doing this. Maybe you could even tell me how crazy I am for just leaving a job without a plan, without any kind of backup, without any security. I do have things set up financially that I'll be okay, but I don't have future income coming in. So yeah, let's explore this together and see what happens.